Good morning, party people around the world. Mick, how was your night? Are you having a good evening, good day?
Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? I don't know. I didn't get much sleep last night. How about you?
Well, I believe the team was actually taking bets on how much I sleep every night, and no one's gotten it right so far. What about you, Audra? You're a little bit of a news hound. Anything happened recently? Anything?
Well, it was quite an eventful night. Speaking of which,
Oh,
how many hours do you sleep, Ryan? Before we dive in, I'm just curious.
on average, 6 to 7.
That's too
Um,
bad.
since log for shell, 3 to 5.
Oh, yeah, I guess three in the poll on
Yeah,
Slack.
3 to 5. But according to my Whoop device, not a sponsor, but really like the technology. Lately, with the exercise, I've been clean closer to 7 to 8. So it's been solid. But
What
you
if
know,
someone comes into your room late at night after a conference and looking for their bag? How many hours of sleep is that?
I'm not sure, but you hire him 5 years later and have them on Coffee Talk with Serge. Welcome everyone to our cold open. It's been quite the eventful couple days.
Mhm.
Everything
Yeah.
from Russia to things. As always, we try to do about a 30-minute-ish show, depending on what we have. Today, we're very excited to talk about all the news fit into about a 15-minute segment. We have
Yep.
a wonderful charity challenge today. Who are we charity challenging about today, Mick?
So it's a 501 called She Should Run. Basically, it's a nonpartisan group working to increase the number of women considering a run for a public office. So give them a look if you've never heard of them before.
And Audra, why are we donating that cause today?
It's all about representation, right? Whether it's, cybersecurity or running for office, trying to increase, the representation of women in cybersecurity. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to dive into our first news story. So this one today, you may have heard yesterday, the Biden administration, they issued a warning that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks against the US. So this is based on evolving intelligence, according to this statement. And the president, he's urging critical infrastructure organizations and the private sector to take action right away to harden their systems if they haven't already. So that's, basic hygiene, like multi-factor authentication, patching against any known vulnerabilities, backing up, encrypting your data, and obviously, having an incident response plan in case there is some form of a cyber attack in the future. So this, goes hand in hand with the Shield Up initiative that we've seen from CISA. And it also is in line with the US government's strategy lately of transparency when it comes to intelligence, trying to stay one step ahead of Russia's next moves during the war.
This has been an ongoing thing. We're talking about this. We're going to do a bit of deep dive on that subject later on in the show, I think. But it is still just stunning to me. I'm used to being the person at the party that no one knows what I do, and they think cyber is something about ASL, and kind of like what is going on. And it's still shocking to
To
me to
be
see this
fair,
often. Yeah, you're not wrong. Like to see the president at this level consistently doing like announcements around cybersecurity. Suddenly, I feel justified in a profession. Like we matter now. It's.
I agree and I disagree. Right. I think we were talking about a bit earlier. I think there's been more mention of cyber at the executive level in the past, I don't know, 3, 4 years than there's been in the past 10. We've heard about it previously, but it's always been, hey, X was breached, right? OPM happened, USPS happened, something like that. But it's never been, here are some proactive steps. I mean, there was a fact sheet that came out with like, hey, here's some things you can do, which I think is really, really amazing for it to come out at that level. I'd like to see more of it, and,
Mhm.
and, and I'm proud of it. But again, the steps that are in there, I'm kind of, yep, yep, 101. We've been saying this for years, but so how effective do you think it's going to be?
I guess my retort to that would be we know how hard it is to disseminate messages to a broad audience that are useful, succinct, and actionable. And I would say the things in the fact sheet are all of those. However, to get it out to a broader audience, perhaps it is a bit watered down. Um, but maybe there should be something like a joint cyber defense coalition of organizations to help private public partnership. I'm coming up with ideas here.
If only.
If
Well,
If
my
only.
friend,
only.
you are pithy. What would you call that?
Mm. Jedi? No, that was something else.
No, that's taken. That's taken. That's
That's
taken.
taken. Einstein? No, that's something else. I'm sure someone will come up with something non-anagram. It'll be wonderful.
Yeah, I think this is it's it's actionable, like you said, and it's super relevant, right? There's a bunch of geopolitical events happening that tie right into this, and I think that means it's at top of everyone's mind. And something else interesting too, related to this, the FBI and CISA, they put out an advisory recently warning about possible threats to SATCOM networks. This is in the US and abroad. It comes after a cyber attack disabled satellite internet for customers in Europe and Ukraine, and that actually coincided with the Russian invasion. So it's still unclear if that was the work of state-backed hackers, but it did happen on the day of the invasion. And the company that was impacted by this said that it was a deliberate cyber attack against their systems by disabling modems. So that's another area where the U.S. government is warning organizations to be on alert, specifically satellite communication networks. And so, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, communications have always been targeted in warfare since, the very first bugler or the first guy with a buffalo horn had a spear thrown at him, right? Because the general was using him to tell what side of the cavalry to move. And so seeing people target satellites today, not surprising, but it's, I think there's a parallel here to kinetic warfare where people are just remembering like, oh, it's not just asymmetrical warfare. There are, big boys and girls against big boys and girls. And when they do that, there are different levels of weaponry and tactics used. And this concept like that, oh, we're opening up a different toy box and attacking satellites. I mean, this is the cyber side. Like what happens when someone launches up a missile with little pieces of aluminum foil that now are going 180,000 miles an hour around the world and hitting all the communication satellites, right?
Right. I think, SATCOM work is nothing new. It's to your point, this is the big kids level of warfare, right? You're now in space, our cyber war, but like a different kind of cyber, I suppose. John Sheehy, the gang over at IO Active, they've got work on this going back to 2014. It's been an issue that long. But now, since we're learning more about it, I think it's the same thing. Security around satellites is a thing. It's a vector now. The same way we learned, I learned right after DEF CON, agricultural security is an important thing we need to pay attention to. So there's all these different verticals. I think as we learn different industries and different stovepipes, different areas of concern, we should throw security at that. It's just something we hadn't considered.
Here's a question for you, Mick. Do you think that, obviously conversations in between government organizations, always difficult, right? Siloed information, all sorts of things there. So here we have like one group that's kind of attacking a private industry satellite systems to disrupt communications. Meanwhile, there's a whole different section, maybe, of the government who's doing things like utilizing satellites for hot points for their C2 comms. Can you imagine like a really angry vodka bar meetup between Turla Group and someone else discussing like, hey, bro, you just took down my hot point?
I would like to believe that it happens on some kind of space station, where Whoopi Goldberg's the bartender and everyone works out. I like to picture that one happening, right?
Forward, yeah, Guinan just coming down like, hey, tell me what's happening.
Hey, let's work this out, right? I think that would be great. But yeah, it changes the face of warfare as how we've known it most recently. Because I think this is very in your face. And this is, this would be akin to your communication system coming down. I think we're seeing the blend in warfare now where these private companies are just, hey, we're offering these services up and they're being utilized by non-state and state elements.
Next thing you know, people are going to be offering to have letters of marques issued for
cyber letters,
cyber piracy,
or the NFT of the letter of marque, I suppose. I don't know how it works out.
And going back to what you said, Ryan, about Turla, the Snake APT group, they were one of the first, but using, satellite internet as an attack vector, which is, an interesting.
Yeah, I'm always impressed. Like they seem to go the extra mile. Like, it would be cool, but it would be even more cool, bro.
Right. And this is a Russia-linked APT group. So, all right, well, now let's move on because we have a big update, and this is regarding the alleged Okta breach that
Has
broke.
anything happened?
Well,
I
we
didn't
have an
miss that.
updated
What?
statement, which we have on the screen now. This just came out within the last 10 minutes or so. And so Okta, just some background. Last night, a cyber criminal group called Lapsus, they released screenshots claiming to have breached Okta's internal systems. And they said that they had super admin access. And the date on those screenshots was back in January, late January. So Okta today just released this updated statement saying that their service was not breached, it's fully operational, and there are no corrective actions that need to be taken by customers. So up until the statement, it was a bit unclear about what this actually meant for Okta's tens of thousands of customers, or I think 15,000 customers that they have. And so in this statement here, they basically have a timeline. So in January, there was an unsuccessful attempt to compromise the account of a customer support engineer who was working for a third-party provider. And as part of Okta's regular procedures, the company says they alerted the provider to the situation, they terminated the user's active Okta sessions, they suspended that account, and then they shared that information for that investigation to a third-party forensics firm. So that was the timeline. They said that they received a report that there was a 5-day window from January 16th through the 21st where the attacker had access to the engineer's laptop, which is consistent with the screenshots from Lapsus. And so then they go into details, which is what we were waiting to find out, which is what privileges that user had. So they said that these engineers, they're unable to delete users or create users, download customer databases. They do have access to data like Jira tickets and a list of users, which is what we saw in those screenshots. So engineers, they can reset passwords and multi-factor authentication for users, but Okta says that they are unable to obtain those passwords. So they're still investigating, but they said there's no impact to HIPAA or FedRAMP customers. And they also, again, reiterated that there's no corrective actions that Okta customers need to take. So that's a significant update from them about what this means for customers.
I don't really know what's going on. We're not tied in. I do know that we've sat in those chairs before. And I know my SOC always had a tradition of incident response whiskey. And so to the folks in the world right now who are dealing with this at Okta and others, I'm going to take advantage of not working in the government anymore, getting some good Irish whiskey here in my heart mug. There we go. Pouring one out for everyone working this around the world.
Oh, y'all thought this was coffee? No.
Oh,
am
I the only one with actual coffee?
I guess so.
I meant to tell you.
It's funny. Ryan and I, we talk about this a lot. I go to you. Whenever I say I miss operations, I miss working in ops, something like this happens and I don't. Yep. And immediately I don't want to do that anymore. So, hug ups to all the blue teams out there dealing with this. Like this happens. This came out really late last night. And guess who didn't sleep last night?
11 o'clock Central last night, 11 p.m. Central. It's hard. It's
so bedtime, past bedtime for most of us.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So yeah, big hugs out to everyone who spent all night working on this everywhere around the world, Okta and other places. We salute you.
Yeah.
What else do we have, Audra?
Yep. Well, it's nice.
I think this is ongoing. This is updating constantly. So more information will be coming out. Like this happened hours ago.
Yep. Right. Exactly. And at Splunk, we're aware of this and investigating internally as well. So that's something that, all Okta customers at this point are, paying attention. And I
can't say, I think one of the biggest issues that every company is having around this is just not enough qualified cybersecurity professionals to handle this threat. If only there was a way to add millions of qualified people.
Right. Well,
someone should make that
so good. So good.
Speaking of that segue, the CISA Director Jen Easterly, she delivered the keynote the other day at this year's Women in Cybersecurity conference, and she made a point to call on leaders to help close the industry's gender gap. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, women are underrepresented in cybersecurity. They hold about a quarter of cybersecurity jobs globally. That's according to Cybersecurity Ventures. And Easterly said in her keynote that she hopes to raise that percentage to 50% by the year 2030. So I wanted to bring this challenge to Ryan and Mick and see, if you guys have any ideas of how to achieve that goal and try to encourage more women to get involved in cyber.
Well, that's a pretty good segue into our 60-second challenge.
Droll, Drew, roll clip.
Droll. I like droll. Both for me.
Droll. And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second charity challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck! And for those of you who've joined late, Mick, who is our charity of choice today?
So our charity is She Should Run. It's a 501 that basically encourages the number of women considering a run for public office. So if you ever considered that, ever thought about that, or ever wanted to push one of your friends into it, give them a look.
There we go. I mean, Jen Easterly, not elected into public office, but she's making a world of change as a senior government official. So super important place there. Let's see. I believe, didn't I win last time?
Depends who votes. Depends who votes. All right. So it's been working out.
No, someday we'll let you run for office too in this Augusta body. But for right now, you're just our voter, Audra. I believe I did win. I'll be very honest. I've had a busy morning. I haven't done the normal prep I do of having a nice script written out under 60 seconds. So I'm going to dodge and I'm going to Uno card. Mick, you get to go first.
Okay. So if I was Jen Easterly for a day, what would I do? The same way I would change any institutional monolith or generational force that places one group above another. I would ask a middle-aged guy how to make those decisions, likely has no base in understanding. So I was going to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment, but none of us could really figure out whether it was an actual amendment because our legal system is that complicated. Turns out, no. But there was a decision by late Justice Bader Ginsburg that in late 96 it said basically what the amendment would have. Gender discrimination is unconstitutional. So if everyone looks like you, you're doing it wrong. Women's Society is Cyberjutsu, Black Girls Hack, Diana Initiative. These are all growing numbers of groups that can use federal funding, so let's give it to them. Since corporations are people too, let's give them some of that incentive to put more women in the workforce. So to paraphrase the great Northeast American poet Christopher George Latour Wallace, give me the loot.
Wow. Great timing.
You went from Equal Rights Amendment to Master Lyricist to Jen E. That was fire. I give you that.
It's not the point of the story. It's the journey getting there, right?
That's all in 60 seconds.
There we go. Okay, let's see what I can do here. Drew? Okay, I think for many of the people who know me in the world, something I've done quite a bit of over the last 10 years as I've rose in the ranks of cybersecurity and having more responsibility is advocate for more women in cybersecurity. Very selfishly, it's because I believe that having less people who look just like me means we will not have the same amount of groupthink, which means we defend better. There's been tons and tons of actual stories proven on this. I've also seen workspaces improve with greater gender and race equality across the board, where everyone just doesn't look like a middle-aged white guy who served in the Navy. Hey, Mick, how you doing? But the idea here is that more people of different backgrounds in an organization makes a huge difference. No one's denying that. How I would affect change is immediately looking at pools of people who are not in the traditional pipelines. People initially turn to the same places you came from, the military, computer science degrees, all sorts of places like that. I think there's a huge untapped lake of potential in the humanities and areas where people do significant amount of analysis, but they just have to be taught the terms and tools to do cyber. And that's where I would go to expand.
Wow. Really good. And I guess I just need to weigh into this because my background is not cybersecurity. So as you said,
isn't? Weird.
No,
What?
I mean, you hired me. So hopefully you knew that. But yeah, my background's in journalism. So, transitioning into this new career, I was grateful to have an opportunity to come on without those really strict requirements that you see maybe with other job postings. So I would agree that that's one of a good way to try to diversify your applicant pool is by reaching beyond the typical pipelines to to hiring in cybersecurity. So I know you're both eagerly waiting to find out who won.
I think there's only one real winner this time.
I think we already know the winner is.
No.
Well, Ryan hired me. Just kidding.
I mean, proof is in the pudding there.
So-
How am I affecting change, Mick? With the people I hire. What have you done this week?
Well, I'm proposing legislation that would incentivize that hiring process for corporations
you didn't even
globally.
explain an amendment.
I don't know how amendments work. Like, I watched that Schoolhouse Rock thing once a long time ago, and I know it sits around for a long time on Capitol Hill, and that's it.
Yeah, actually, the Equal Rights Amendment started as Mitch McConnell.
50 years ago, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yep. Once you start getting into the double-digit amendments, it's hard to keep track for me. Maybe I shouldn't acknowledge that, but anyway. Winner of the challenge, I would say, Ryan, I'm going to go with you just because I really believe in hiring people that maybe don't have the skills yet, but have a desire to learn. I think there's a huge pool of untapped
As your boss, it pains me to say this, but it was in
But I
fact
did pick
Mick.
wrong. Was it Mick?
I would like for folks in the comments, who do you think won?
The format of the show, I think Mick actually won.
Well, okay, Drew says Mick got robbed. Adam says
I don't know. Folks in the comments, what do you think? There are no losers here. Only, Ryan forging everyone's MBOs and signing our paychecks. So really, I guess we're all losers except Ryan.
It's good to be king.
Very good. Your crown's tilted, my lord.
Could we do czars instead? It's good to be a czar, Kovar the czar, which is a great segue into our final segment here. So what are we talking about here? What's the deep dive? We are going to go into, I believe, more about what organizations can do with the proclamation from Joe Biden, right? Like, do more cyber things. Russia is bad.
Right.
Talk. Go into it. Let's hear. What do you have, Mick? What do you have? Bring it to me.
But it was basically like we kind of talked about it a touch earlier. The statement came out yesterday, day before. Potential cyber attacks are coming. Okay, awesome. We know that this happens every day behind the scenes. What was great about this was here are things you can do today, right? The fact sheet that came with it. I don't know how your calls go. Mine, there's a lot of cool. I love what you guys do. Surge is awesome. What can I do today? I need to leave this meeting with something to go back to my C-level with and tell them what we can do. And this has that, right?
It has it. It has actionable things. Drew, would you mind bringing up the fact sheet and scrolling down to about mid-page where it actually has the execute the following steps with urgency? We're going to ignore the very first one when that comes up because it's a little hot topic right now. But it's things like deploy modern security tool. And I think when we were prepping in the show earlier, I think this is kind of what you were alluding to a bit, Mick. Of it's a little soft, right? Like eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, mandate multi-factor authentication, which I still agree with and believe in. But check with your cybersecurity professionals. So, you kind of push back on this, Nick, if I call you out on the carpet here of saying like these are actionable things, but they're pretty soft. My retort was like, yeah, but you're making this from the White House. We're not expecting to see STIG level guidance. But now I'm kind of going back and saying like, okay, but is this really just a compendium of things that have already been said in other executive orders and fact sheet, or I guess not fact. I've never even seen a fact sheet.
So yeah, exactly that. I think that's a new one. This is easily digestible.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. This is the White House saying, hey, do this. And I don't think it's really any different than when CISA says, hey, do this. Like, it's just different letterhead. I'm not sure if it's a direct copy and paste. Drew can check behind the scenes for us, but is there anything really new in this?
My disagreement would be, like, the president of the United States is pushing out something with his name behind it, or at least his office behind it, that says mandate the use of multi-factor authentication in clear, concise language that is not buried in the minutia of an executive order background or delegated down to NIST or CISA or whomever for a kind of background thing.
So to that end, why wouldn't you just mandate multi-factor authentication, right? You're urging the compliance with, but that's just a best practice you can put as a thing.
I'm a big fan. I know I use this story a lot. I probably need to find a new one, but of the Walmart mandating barcodes, right? No one used
Fair.
barcodes until Walmart said we're not buying from you unless you have barcodes. And suddenly, in the next 2 years, every product had a barcode. We've talked about this a lot for SBOM. For those of you who don't know, Mick and I have the most boring passion in the world, which is around software bill of materials.
It just makes sense.
It makes so much sense.
It's just so if you buy something, you want to know all the things that are in something. If you make a dish, you want to know all the ingredients that are in there. Why is your software any different? Anyway, but a separate show. Go back to the archives and watch it. I'm sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, the point is, like, things like these fact sheets, like, do you think this could turn into eventual legislation or mandates from the government of like, hey, if you want to sell to the government, you have to prove that you have, like, this is where it gets hard though, right? Deploy modern security tools on your computers and devices to continuously look for mitigate threats. I'm not saying that is by Splunk, but basically that is the most modern, wonderful security tool. So you should just do that.
100%. I don't disagree with you in any way. But that's it's very, very opaque. Right? What's a modern security tool?
We have a couple listeners from the UK here, Ezrin, I believe. And one of the things in here I find interesting is they have encrypt your data so it cannot be used if it is stolen. And we talked about the ICO a couple shows ago, Mick, where the ICO in the United Kingdom will levy pretty harsh fines against any company where it's determined that their data at rest was not encrypted and was stolen. So if you have your laptop and it gets stolen and you have to report a data breach of PII and it wasn't encrypted, like ICO will levy some heavy fines. We don't really have anything similar in the US.
The ICO or the heavy fines?
ICO leveraging heavy fines against government and private.
Right.
And
I mean, yeah, I don't think we have either in the States. I haven't seen a fine proportional to the revenue of an incident, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which is how they do it there, right? I mean,
right.
And what's fascinating to me is they'll even fine local governments. It'd be like if some government agency left a laptop out on the metro in DC and got busted, be like the FBI saying, or IRS coming back and saying, oh, by the way, you now owe us $2.9 million in fines to pay to ourselves.
It's a good thing that never happens in DC.
Never, ever. Definitely not what causes metro fires. I assume it's the laptop batteries, always.
But no, I think this is super digestible. It's a really easy list. Also, it's a really easy personal threat model tangent. It's easy to extrapolate to that. Okay, well, if I should have multi-factor on my business accounts, maybe I should do that in my personal accounts too.
I do like that area.
And again, I think it goes back. You can adopt this in your personal threat model, but I think if this was real teeth behind this, there's legislation that we could have that would mandate all of these things. Well, the majority of these things that are hard.
But one thing that I wanted to show here, Drew, if you could bring up Shields Up from CISA, I was kind of thinking back to your earlier statement of like, hey, this is really vague. But then you have things like from CISA, Shields Up. And if people haven't seen this, it's a great new initiative. It's partly tied to JCDC. It has a whole bunch of things there, but it kind of goes through. They stood this up a while ago. Apparently, Jen Easterly herself came up with the Shields Up idea and logo, which is pretty awesome, actually.
It's pretty good Star Wars reference.
Yeah, it's solid. It's good, but this has a lot more practical outcomes. It has a lot more things that are tied to what you can do if you are a technological person. That's not actually the right word, but a technical person. It kind of goes in. We've participated in aspects of this with JCDC, where we provided free software that's available. A whole bunch of other vendors have done great things. So I guess pulling back from something Mick said earlier, if you can use the White House briefing fact sheet to get a conversation that's succinct with your executive staff and then migrate into something like Shields Up for the real tactical implementation, you're probably going to have a great day.
Perfect.
And this is something that never existed until this year, which is pretty freaking awesome. So,
yeah, this will be a back in my day conversation, right?
Yeah.
So
back in my day, the government just had a great firewall. So anyway,
just the one firewall. That's all we had, kids.
Oh yeah.
What do you got coming up? I'm heading to DC tomorrow for ShmooCon. So
you're going to DC.
Going to ShmooCon, come find me. I'll be there.
They'll be there. I will be at MITRE AttackCon with Marcus LaFerrera and Haley for actually doing some presentations for AttackCon 3. I'm going to be talking about the attack detection collector that Marcus wrote. He let me ride his coattails. And then Haley will be talking about RBA and little coattails, RBA and how to implement it at scale using things like attack, which is pretty awesome methodologies. So we got some. It's almost like real world coming back. So.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about ransomware today, did we?
Oh,
I don't think we did.
We did not talk about ransomware. I will say this: we're going to close out. We have a lot of stuff coming out for ransomware. Big announcement coming out tomorrow. Check your Twitters, check your Slacks. Surge is dropping some hottest new singles coming soon. And then we're going to have a lot more things on that over the next couple months from Surge, from Threat Research Team, Splunk Security Essentials. Got a lot coming.
Yeah.
So
if you're not signed up for Surge alerts on our email, make sure to go do that. That's become an insider.
Smash that like button. Cool. With that, Drew, why don't you close us out very carefully? Thanks everyone for being here today.
See you soon.